Experience without theory is blind, but theory without experience is mere intellectual play. All our knowledge begins with the senses, proceeds then to understanding, and ends with reason. There is nothing higher than reason. Science is an organized knowledge. Wisdom is an organized life. In law, a man is guilty when he violates the rights of others. In ethics, he is guilty if he only thinks of doing so. Morality is not the doctrine of how we may make ourselves happy, but how we make ourselves worthy of happiness. The only object of practical reason are therefore those of good and evil. For by the former is meant an object necessarily desired according to a principle of reason, by the latter one necessarily shunned, according to a principle of reason. But although all of our knowledge begins with experience, it does not follow that it arises from experience. Although must, directly or indirectly, by the way of certain characters, relate ultimately to intuition, and therefore, with us, to sensibility, because in no other way can an object be given to us. A categorical imperative would be one which represented an action as objectively necessary in itself, without reference to any other purpose. One who makes himself a worm cannot complain afterwards if people step on him. There is something splendid about innocence, but what is bad about it, in turn, is that it cannot protect itself very well and is easily seduced. Keep your feet firmly planted on the ground. Don't let your ego run out of control and convince you that you are better than anyone else. You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. No beauty shines brighter than that of a good heart. Money and success don't change people, they merely amplify what is already there. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the result of other people's thinking. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. There is, therefore, only one categorical imperative. It is, act only according to that maxim by which you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. All human knowledge begins with intuitions, and proceed thence to concepts, and ends with ideas. An organized product of nature is that in which all the parts are mutually ends and means. God put a secret art into the forces of nature so as to enable it to fashion itself out of chaos into a perfect world system. Act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, never merely as a means to an end, but always at the same time as an end. I had, therefore, removed knowledge, in order to make room for belief. Immaturity is the incapacity to use one's intelligence without the guidance of another. It is not necessary that whilst I live happily, but it is necessary that so long as I live I should live honorably. So act that your principle of action might safely be made a law for the whole world. Live your life as though your every act were to become a universal law. Happiness is not an ideal of reason, but of imagination. By a lie, a man annihilate his dignity as a man. No matter how fast a lie runs, the truth will someday overtake it. Sit and reflect on life itself and you would discover that nothing happens by chance. A beautiful life does not just happen, it is built. Your success and happiness depend on your willingness to help others solve their problems. We are not rich by what we possess but by what we can do without. Whereas the beautiful is limited, the sublime is limitless, so that the mind in the presence of the sublime, attempting to imagine what it cannot, has pain in the failure but pleasure in contemplating the immensity of the attempt. An action is essentially good if the motive of the agent be good, regardless of the consequences. Feminine traits are called weakness. People joke about them, fools ridicule them, but reasonable persons see very well that those traits are just the tools for the management of men, and for the use of men for female designs. Genius is the ability to independently arrive at, and understand concepts that would normally have to be taught by another person. Thoughts without content are empty, intuition without concepts are blind. Our age is the age of criticism, to which everything must submit. Religion through its holiness and legislation through its majesty commonly seek to exempt themselves from it. Two things fill the mind with ever new and increasing wonder and awe: the starry heavens above me, and the moral law within me. Man must be disciplined, for he is by nature raw and wild. The death of dogma is the birth of morality. All the interests of my reason, speculative as well as practical, combine in the three following questions: what can I know? What ought I to do? And what may I hope? Beneficence is a duty, and he who frequently practices it, and sees his benevolent intentions realized comes, at length, really to love him to whom he has done good. Enlightenment is man's release from his self-incurred tutelage. It is man's inability to make use of his understanding without direction from another. Nothing is required for this enlightenment, however, except freedom, and indeed the most harmless among all the things to which this term can properly be applied. Nothing is impossible. The word itself says impossible. The struggle you are in today is developing the strength you need for tomorrow. Victory has 1,000 fathers, but defeat is an orphan. Rudeness is the weak person's imitation of strength. Men will not understand that when they fulfill their duties to men, they fulfill thereby God's commandments.